what we've got in front of us is a whole chuck roll, square cut basically, neck off. So this is where the neck would be. The head would kind of be over here. And then you've got the beginnings of what goes into the longissimus dorsi or chuck eye roll. And the best way we can look at this is kind of like a, if you could think of a pork butt. This is basically the pork butt of the beef world, the upper shoulder. Okay. You know, if you turn around here, I'll show you basically kind of this part right here. And that's the chuck roll. This here would be the chuck arm, a little different from the deltoid down. A lot of reference of body parts to that way, like the students can make the association, like brisket, you know, pectoral for working out, as you know, all that. So helps make that mind association. So here, this would be the beef copa if it was pork. Okay. But that chuck eye roll, that's kind of a money roll. They call that the poor man's ribeye, if you will. Great opportunity. Your average chuck roll is probably about 20 to 22 pounds from your average sized carcass at about 750 to 850 carcass weight. From a live animal, that was probably like 12, 13, 1,400 pounds. Depends on which beef breed and such. So you've got it as a working muscle. You've got that chuck eye, and then below that, all that is basically the shape and size of a brisket. It's very similar, it performs very similarly, but there's a lot less weight, or I should say waste in fat. You know, with a brisket, as you well know, has a high amount of fat, and you trim it down, you get that decal off. There's still a good amount of fat in there, but it's very similar in size and shape and almost weight. This is not a replacement for brisket. But if you're not limited to just brisket, then chuck, depending on the time of year, provides a great barbecue alternative. Right. You know, for sure. I mean, it's like I said, it's basically the Boston butt of pork, and we all know how well the shoulder does. Lamb, American lamb does that as well. Yeah. Anything from the shoulder, you slow and low, it's going to be super gooey and tasty and delicious. So, and really how to profit out of this, one of the opportunities I like to talk to industry professionals is they're oftentimes buying short ribs, especially now we're coming up on fall. You're going to see a lot more braised items, slow cooked items come on menus. Yeah. It's hearty, it's rich, and it's applicable to the season. And that's how chefs says we do. We cook with the seasons. Same way with butchery. You think and look at pieces. You've got, you know, bone-in or boneless short ribs is very popular. Right? Yeah. Portion cut from a meat plant, like what we do a lot of portion cuts and provide that at a certain premium price because we're taking the labor on. Yep. Taking the labor off of you. You don't have to worry about the consistency and things like that. But if you want to and have there's always a couple questions when you approach butchery. Butchery is all cool and all, but it doesn't always make sense if it's not applicable to your business. If you don't have the skilled staff or time within a shift to do that, then it doesn't make sense. If you do, that's great. Yeah. You know, and we know now with labor and things like that being as tight as it is, as a business owner, it's about providing options. So the chuck roll, you know, when people are buying, say, chuck flap in the $8, $9, $10 a pound range for just a certain section of this to do your boneless short ribs at, say, $9 a pound, basically this here might be between, depending on the time of year, you know, $4 to $5 a pound on the market, depending where, you know, what time of year it is. Supply and demand, as with briskets or any cut, they have their ebb and their flow. You can get a chuck roll for half that, and all of this is boneless short rib. When you look again, to look at a piece of meat and see the profitability out of it, that's what I look at, you know. And I don't want to sell you a piece of meat, I want to sell you a solution. And one, that is what grade that might be. Is it the right grade for what you're looking to achieve? You know, for shrinkage cooking like that and where it's going to be tender, don't necessarily need prime. Yep. I mean, you might, depending on, you know, what your concept is, but you could get a good choice or you could get a good select or even some, what they call no roll, which no roll is ungraded, right? And if you're just stewing it, braising it, and the cooking method and the ingredients you're using to enhance it is what's really making that good, then you can, again, it's up to you as the business owner to make those decisions.
Different options.
Including how to bring it in. Bring it in like this and have somebody or 2 or 3 people who are trained to do this, which is very easy on a scale of butchery technique, because it's a lot of seam butchery. Yeah.
But chef, the most profitable will be those Manhattan steaks, right? If we were going to
cut
make the most money out of this.
Yeah, so like a lot of saloons, barbecue places, steakhouses, bringing something like this in, what we're going to do is we're going to take the chuck eye out. That can be a special feature.
Right.
in a different application, either a steak cut or a carved item that's really flavorful. And then the rest of it, there's the Denver steak that comes out of here.
Yeah.
If you want to get intricate, or just do short ribs. Or you take the eye out, you get, maybe 10 portions out of it at, say, $15 to $25 a pound. You just paid for the whole chuck roll plus, you paid for basically 2 or 3 chuck rolls with just this, and you still have all this to sell.
Stew meat left over.
Yeah, stew meat. So you could take this out, menu it. The rest of it, you could cook like a brisket, shred it, barbacoa, birria. I'm just gonna kind of point out something here, like we explained earlier. So to think of the body, if you will, here's the head, the back of the neck coming in. Again, turn around so we can kind of point this out. So the neck here. And what we're going to be working on is this little piece of longissimus dorsi. Turn more around there so we get that there. So like right up to about here. And then the ribeye is basically after the 5th rib bone through the 12th rib bone. And that's what kind of these here, the back ribs and such. Okay, so we're going to have some fun with that.
Rib bone connected to my...
Anyway, thank you. Great thing I love about these knives is the handles. It's kind of got like a semi non-slip grip that makes it really nice.
Yeah, that's our new tactile handles that we have on our new Falcon knives. Yeah, designed that way. So
I really don't technically need a knife to do this because it's literally just pulling seams apart, And but what we're going to try and do is follow a nice natural seam in the silver skin. And what's nice is this is a real good cut to bring in to introduce to your staff if you're going to start doing some in-house butchery.
Yeah.
It's low cost compared to, say, like skin and tenderloins, getting that silver skin off, or at a much higher price. Something like this, people can hone in on. In butchery, there's a simple saying: you follow the bone. Number one, when there's no more bone to follow natural seams. Yeah. That's butchery in a nutshell.
There you go.
I mean, it's much more than that. Historically speaking, and from the true skill level of what it is and the craft of it, and taking it even further from the butchery component into the more advanced techniques of salumi, charcuterie, gourmage, and all those other things. Yeah. And that's really when you start thinking like a chef, introducing the butchery components, you can really just drive it home with a cut like this. This is one of my favorite ones to do. So I'm just going to start here, and I'm going to use my hand and my thumb a little bit for some of the separation there, and we can see we're just going to follow this natural seam here to remove the eye.
There you go.
And a lot of people, I see kind of doing cutting this way too. Sometimes, again, when I was in teaching in school, it's hard to really do this and then have to look over something, and it's a habit, but if somebody's comfortable doing it that way, that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it just makes it a little more challenging.
Yeah.
So I tend to try and,
I can still hear your voice in culinary school. Stand up straight. You would always say that, but
and I wanted to put this on the table rather than a cutting board, because we're not going to be cutting down into the metal. You know what I mean? Yeah. That'll come when we get portions.
Dole that knife.
And
what I like to tell people, Chef, and I don't know if you agree, is you don't have to be fast. That's what I say. Take your time. When you've done this your whole career, so you know what you're doing. But if someone's just learning, take your time and go slow.
And it's okay, again, because you're working on such an economical cut.
Yeah.
Even in its high point throughout this cyclical year, it's still an affordable cut and something easy to enhance your skill on and practice on, rather than tenderloins and more expensive cuts. What I like to use or reference oftentimes when talking to customers about this, or really any cut they're menuing, is utilizing the Beef It's What's for Dinner.com website. They not unlike the American Land Board and all the tools and resources of the Pork Council and all the different councils that provide information and useful, relevant information, not only for professionals in food service or retail, but also the home consumer. Because at the end of the day, purchasers' decisions are made by the consumers.
That's right.
They drive what the chain is. So the more you can prepare individuals from every aspect of the distribution chain, from literally farm to table, that's really where you're making an impact. And that's where the rubber meets the gravel. We're gonna remove, there's a little bit of a muscle here. Almost looks like an elongated, elongated, like a flank steak almost. And what's nice is, so any of this little trim that we put aside for our tacos or our burger grind or what have you, our stew meat. Yep. This is where I'm gonna kind of move it to up here so I have a little bit more stability and such in coming in and kind of, my arthritis is kicked in and when I turn 50 and it's that much harder
no way
with a
50.
glove.
No way you're 50.
52.
No way.
I've had an amazing, wonderful journey and career as a working chef and sales and education and manufacturing and from the whole chain, if you will.
Gosh, but look at that skill. I struggle taking off the silver skin.
Yeah.
I'll be spending an hour getting my beef ready for smoking.
There you go.
Yeah, for the people at home, this is the man who taught me how to cut every piece of protein. So learned from him in culinary school and still learning.
And it's a good point you bring up about the speed thing. There's speed, there's skill, there's tact, and then there's also labor and efficiency. You know, I might slow down more if this was a tenderloin or something. With it being a chuck, I'm not going to worry as much. I want to get through. I'm going to make profitability off of this, even if it's not perfect. Because again, all this trim is more or less either grindable, with the exception of, say, the true sinew. You don't want meat dental floss when you're eating a burger, you know what I mean? So, and then something like this, you know, almost looks like the size and shape of 1/2 of a flat iron. And that was the other thing great about the information, tools and resources information that's out there, like it's what's for beefdinner.com. There's a lot of consumer-friendly information as well as professional retail food service. It goes over the cuts, talks about all these different things, and even more so from an operator's perspective, they put in a lot of information that the USDA is available to the public out there. The USDA daily reports on all the beef cuts, pork cuts, poultry prices, and whatever. You can look at a cut and see a trajectory of current year, previous year, and then the 3-year average. And as an operator, look at that and plan your menus and your menu pricing about that way, rather than a reaction to pricing every week or every other week or every month going up and down. If you take a moment and look at it from the sky high view, you can plan your menus and your purchasing a lot more efficiently and maintain your profitability. You want to season that up and cook that up for us there, Chef, please, thank you. What we're going to do is get into this a little bit more before we get into this, but as you can see here, I mean, that's basically a brisket.
It looks pretty much like
right?
it, almost.
You got your point and kind of your flat, right? You know, the decal is kind of moving, that big nodular fat. So, and it's, as Chef Deuce was saying too, this is a lot more lean versus fat, and you've got a 50% already. That's without trimming it. You're already up against 50%. This here ready to go. You get a higher meat to a fat ratio, basically. One cool thing is, you know, again, we just want to trim up some of the silver skin and fat. I'm going to separate the silver skin a little different because we don't want to put that in the taco. You wouldn't want that in the taco at all. No. You know, that doesn't break down very well.
Chef, in the industry, are you seeing this skill, like just butchery, period, are you seeing it kind of, you know, fade away a little bit? Because there's not a lot of people that, you know, that can do this. They just order it, you know, like already cut up or like already processed how they want it.
And yeah, so doing stuff like something like this is probably a lot more easier than butchery and portion cutting, things like that, again, because of the different skills and the different applications. This, we could just cook this, shred it all, and there we have our meal. I could do a special with that. It's very easy. Something like portioning ribeyes or more expensive cuts might be a little more. And again, as a business operator and as a professional chef, you have to ask yourself a couple key questions in how you approach your purchasing, procurement, and your labor, and where you're putting your energies and money. Is do I have the staff? Does the staff I have the skill? Does the staff I have not only have the skill, but do they have the time and labor, you know, within a shift? Is that what I need them to be focusing on to have an effective business? And then from there, do I have the demographic where do I have the opportunities in my dining outlets for this, this, and this to make it worthwhile. Absolutely. Not just because of the cool factor. I can butcher it. Yeah. You know, being a business owner is making those assessments. That's what I enjoy, because every assessment is different, and each owner. And it's nice when you start talking to owners about that type of approach. And it's like, oh, so to answer your question, there's some where it's applicable and very easy, and there's others where it's not so much. And it's more about showing them the value and or the worth. If they're going to be spending this much money on something, why is it so high? Well, we started with a big piece like this, and it helps really drive that point home rather than just trying to explain it in front of somebody. You know, it really helps drive that point home. And here you've got that serratus, the larger portion there, as you'll see.
And Chef, was this, I mean, it's in the family, you know, butchering. Is that kind of how, you know, you got
more or less through hunt, not professionally, cooking and cooking and any knife type applications was primarily for hunting, fishing, you know, recreational type use. I think my father worked in a school cafeteria in his neighborhood when he was young, with, you know, one of those Catholic schools, and you had all the nuns and all that stuff. But so our serratus muscle there, as you can see how beautiful that is, versus kind of that little smaller serratus looking piece off of the chuck eye roll here. And again, we could get a Jakarta or a needler. This would take well to a cubing for like a chicken fried steak or something along those lines. Here, we'll take that one, cook that, and compare that to that piece off of our chuck eye there.
Now, Chef, when you're breaking down everything, I see, I mean, is this the go-to knife, the curved boning? Or do you prefer the straight flex bone?
I really like this one. I prefer this one. This one's for more of the skilled, smaller portions. Right. I haven't used one of these in a while, so this was one of my go-to ones. But especially for working with larger cuts, in many applications, it's often more practical. For really getting in there and doing those larger cuts that might need to be done. Something like that. And again, we take some of the fat out. And we can see this here starting to take shape and whatnot as we kind of trim some of this away. And what we're getting down to is that chuck flap, that latissimus muscle on the back there. You know, when you're bodybuilding and you do that lat pose, that's kind of what
how's it happen? How's it go?
That front lat spread,
Let's see it.
You know, and it's really using the entirety of the knife, and oftentimes when peeling is, again, he was saying this is a little more forgiving because it is a little more economical and we have a lot more application, so I can be a little more aggressive and quick in taking it off, you know. And then what I want to really do is get some nice clean cutting surfaces, and we can see that's kind of got a lot of fatty pockets and stuff like that. So I might use that for stew or barbecue. Any of that collagen in there is going to break down in the slow, low cooking process, and that's going to be some good barbacoa or good stew meat. This one here, what we're trimming and exposing now would, I guess, be called a Denver roast, if this is what you cut Denver steaks out of. You know, one of the benefits of groups and organizations such as beefitswhatsfordinner.com, they're kind of the marketing, food service, retail arm of the National Cattlemen's Association. So getting cuts and introducing things like this into the retail segments and various things is very helpful. Now we can kind of look at this more, and we can see what we're looking for is the way the muscle fibers go. And that's how you want to think, like we could cook this and then as a carved item.
It almost looks like a picanha without the fat cap.
Exactly. No, it's about the size and shape, maybe a little larger or it's about the size and shape and weight of a cap, you know, top butt cap steak or what have you.
Not that I think about picanha that often, but
that's one of your specialties, right?
I'm gonna eat some tonight.
If we have it large like this, an 8-ounce steak is gonna be very thin. So one thing that I like to do is kind of eyeball it, and I'm gonna square it up. Again, I can use that for my bourguignon, my other tips and different things like that. And then say, okay, I see fat there, and then eyeball it, and I'm gonna I want a nice thick steak, and maybe do like almost like a petite filet, you know, so I could call it a Denver filet, center cut Denver filet. I can get a little more money too when it's, you know, I make it a little different presentation. So I might do something like that, and then like that. And now we can
make your medallions from there.
And exactly. Or if I'm not making medallions, again, I think of catering and such where it's not a plated event. Something like this would make a great little roast for a carving station.
Fantastic.
You know, and you could have a bunch of these in back and come and bring them. And you could either slice it thin or carve them into a nice petite fillet. No different than a prime rib night. It's just a little different cut. You know, so
who would know?
You know, we do something like that. That, and then if we want to do the old banquet cut, because this is tapered down at the end, right? You just give a little cut.
Don't show them that secret.
You know, so just out of that alone, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Like $20 plate, right?
Yeah, $20 plate.
Each.
The whole chuck might cost me $100, 90 to 120, depending on the grade or whatever, and you know. And then we've got still kind of all of this here to menu and mess with. As we can see here, it's kind of the size and shape of a ribeye. This would be, again, that's the piece that touches up to the ribeye cut there. This would be the neck. This here, and you can almost take your hand and kind of run it from here along there, and tell me what you feel. Press down as you slide it. Like you feel any difference in the
like
musculature?
It's a little bit tougher, and then it gets
more tough up in the neck here. Yeah, feel that, and then feel how firm it is.
Ooh,
right?
It's almost like a bone. It almost feels like right there.
It's So that's the knot. That's kind of like, because it's such a working area. That's literally where the head kind of pivots.
Okay.
There's your cross rib. You could do that as, again, this is boneless short. I mean, it's neck. And it comes off of a section where the rib bones begin, first rib bone and all that back. So that's braisable. It's got collagen in it. It won't be as tough when it's cooked. It'll be nice and fork tender in this application. I would not flash cook this or high heat type thing. That's definitely a braising piece. Great for pot roast. This is an awesome, basically Chicago beef right there. That's the whole thing.
Put it in a
Chicago beef,
sandwich,
the whole thing.
slap some gravy on it.
So,
Yeah.
Some hot peppers.
But yeah, I mean, you can go slow and low on that, and that would be a great piece there. And then this, again, square that up a little bit, add to my chunks of my nice hearty fall stew or barbacoa or whatever. Now I've got a nice little roast here. My cross rib, boneless cross rib. So I could do short ribs, or I could do my poor man ribeyes. Basically the same thing. And again, I could cook it whole.
Oh, carving station.
Carving station. And I tell a lot of operators this, especially like bar saloons, especially like where I travel and such, where I work in Wyoming, Nebraska, where I have worked in the past, New Mexico, Colorado, and some of the more rural areas where they're doing some of this whole shoulder cooking and things like that, to show them how they could use that for their shredded, but just make money just off of this one little cut here. And on a Friday night, a Saturday, it's not a replacement for prime rib.
Yeah.
No, but it is a carved item that you could feature on a Friday night, or special, low cost, higher profitability. It's super tasty and things like that.
The average time, if you're looking at the average consumer in their kitchen, that it takes from beef to get through the whole process to their table.
Gosh, from soil, or the inception, if you will, all the way to the plate. You know, you've got at least minimum 18 to upwards of 30 months for A and B maturity carcasses that are typically going to the food service channel, versus C maturity and older, which typically are more milk and dairy animals, that Holstein programs typically, and you see different times of the year where, like years ago, in 2015, the beef industry spiked. We're in a very much cyclical period as then, where there was such a high demand for beef. The dairy folks started selling off the cows, which were the mom ones and produced. So there was this whole cycle of the beef chain being depleted in a sense, and then it takes because it's 9 months minimum to have the next one, and then the growth period to be at least 18 months or 24 months, upwards of 30 months to get into the food service cycle. So yeah, and then once it's slaughtered there or harvested, if you will, then it gets broken down into their boxed beef or to their portion cuts, retailers, food service professionals, and then it gets to the plate. So, it could be almost 3 years. People ask what I do, and they say I move warm bodies and cold body parts and pieces, and they look at me and I says, I deal in meat. And they're like, oh, But anyway, so that's kind of a chuck roll. And really, when you think about it, you've got stew here, you've got stew here. There's probably about 20 servings right in this pile. I wouldn't maybe, move that silver skin and stuff, but when you look at it, you've got about probably 20 servings there. We got another 20 servings out of this here. If you averaged it out just from a portion perspective of a 20-pound chuck average, and you get, say 8-ounce portions, you're going to have about 40 so portions. $15 a portion.
Yeah. Wow.
And then you can get more.
Yeah.
You are $18 or $20, $25, or you get down into breaking it down into the individual things and menuing it that way. You're going to get a little higher dollar for your Delmonico, that specialty cut.
Yeah.
Versus say a stew cut or something like that, and really manipulate. You manage the profitability. Right. And that's why I approach what I do from a perspective of, let's look at the chuck, let's see where it sits on the year over year price-wise, and let's see what's applicable in your business and how to monetize and be profitable off of that. Yeah. I like a ribeye as is, bone in. I think getting it like this is pretty easy, especially for like a saloon or a barbecue place. Again, practicality on a scale of butchery, it's pretty easy. This one we had brought in a Black Angus, our own Braveheart Black Angus beef ribeye here out of central Kansas, 100-mile radius, path proven, etc. All this wonderful stuff finished on like a steam pressed corn, so it's like a cornflakes. I've eaten a handful myself. I have really good marbling because of it, just like this. But yeah, no, it's and being such in a tight concentric circle, and the fact that it is our own program makes it really nice. Awesome. But bringing these in, this is a back rib, or also known as the Texas style rib, and what have you. So I've done like chef butcher events where I partner with a chef and we do a menu. I set up this where this would still be attached, and then got it, and I would do a butchery demo, and we'd do a 4-course. The chef would prepare it. So like the first course might be something where we just take the bones off, following the bones. These have been really worked closely. You can see where the groove is, and then these are called the rib fingers. Usually you don't want to serve a rib finger on a steak. When you're portion cutting, you leave that on a little bit so it helps you go overcut, then you can trim that down and get a really nice steak. Something like this, we can get in there and score, and then make our, I'm hitting the cutting board there, sorry. Obviously having saws and implements of destruction like that are a lot more challenging and labor intensive. A bandsaw is just simply dangerous. Yeah. Cut through one. So, give an example. There we go. So if you can figure there's always going to be 7 of these bones in every bone-in ribeye, you can get 14 petite short ribs and do that as a 1 bite. So we get into our ribeye. I'm going to deconstruct this a little bit to further out. This would be more of a unique menu item. You wouldn't want to take the spinalis off. If you were a steakhouse in Nebraska, they'd drawn and quarter you if you took that spinalis off. But we're going to show you a neat little technique, and that can be applicable in some operations. So you got a lot of this subcutaneous fat, this stretchy fat. This is the stuff that gunks up your grinder. Yeah. This is the stuff that ends up being meat dental floss and such. So that stuff you typically, it's good to render if you're going to use beef fat or tallow and things like that. But this more solid fat here, that's the type of stuff that would be good. That back fat, some of that back and rib fat there is really good for burgers and things like that. So just cleaning some of that up. And, you know, this should be considered basically a 1x1 where you've got 1 inch of lip or tail at the this piece of fat here. And then you've got about 1 inch or so right there. So like what they call a 1x1. Okay. On a strip loin, it would be called a tail. Even here, it could be called tail or referred to as lip on or lip off.
Yeah, gotcha.
Right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So we've got our rib fingers here. That's where those individual ribs sat in. And I'm just gonna go ahead and trim those off. And then what I want to do is, so if I'm going to portion cut steaks, I'm going to take this whole lip off. I'm going to get my measure there and then look here, follow that natural seam, and then basically do this. Put this aside for a moment.
That's the burger meat, or
so
like,
yeah.
or
So I could use this for burger. I could use this for taco.
Okay.
I could still call it a ribeye taco.
No, I'm talking
about
about
so the lip.
Yeah.
So it kind of looks like almost like a piece of bacon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the events I did was with a brewer up in Fort Collins, and I did a ribeye demo for them, and they took it a little further. They did actually like ribeye lip bacon. So they took this, did a standard like salt sugar cure for like 7 days, pressed, and then they did a cold smoke. 50 of these, you figure 2 to a serving, that's 25 servings. How much can you sell 2 of these little 1 bites for on a plate? That's one
Little
bite.
amuses and
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, something like that. $8, $10.
Yeah.
Could I do this as a Bloody Mary garnish?
Whoa.
Yep.
Oh heck yeah! Now we're talking. Now I'm upselling. I'm taking trim, using it in an application that I can my bigger bang for my buck. I get 300%. You know, I get a much larger markup on my libations, my liquid refreshments than I do my
Beef bacon
cuts.
Bloody Marys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Beef ribeye. Ribeye lip, kiss the ribeye lip. If you want to get cheeky with it and all, or you don't even need to go that far. Something like this, let's try it out. We're going to try it out a couple ways because I've done this demo also for country clubs and for some of the Hispanic operators who want to have a ribeye steak on the menu, and I tell them, well, what about doing some ribeye chicharron?
Yeah.
Okay, this chicharron is typically fat, right? So, you could do this in a small pan. I like to sometimes start these on like a flat top maybe, and then finish them in a deep fryer to do the chicharron. Yep. So now we've got the remainder of the ribeye, and there's really two muscles left on here. You have the ribeye heart, which again from this end here.
It's a little blue rare, but it's still good.
Yeah, we have this end here, which was originally from the chuck. That's where it attached to.
Yeah.
And then it comes back. This end here, where it's all lean, it's a single muscle right here. This is where now the strip loin would be attached. Do want to show kind of taking off. Let's split it there, and we can see. Okay, this outer muscle here. The spinalis, that's the money muscle.
The ribeye cap?
The ribeye cap. Typically, I've seen it as high as cleaned and trimmed, as high as $40, $45 a pound, depending on the time of year and which year it was. In order to take that off, you see that white line. What I was saying earlier was follow the bone. When there's no more bone to follow, you follow natural seams. So it's naturally something that you really don't even need a knife.
Oh yeah, I see what you're doing.
You just follow that fat line, and it peels apart. And the knife is more of a helper in that. Now we've got our ribeye heart, our spinalis, and this makes, again, this is about the size or shape of kind of a flank steak or even a flat iron. Now we've got this, and now we can use a nice sharp knife, such as this Cozzini Quantum, and begin to fillet it out. What I would do as a restaurant chef with this now, I could take this, I could put a little bit of salsa verde, herbs, a pesto.
Yeah.
And then exactly what you said there, roll these up tight, okay? I could do string with these, but in this application, I would do foil. and I would tamp it down really tight, and then I'd have that green in the center, and then I'd freeze them. And then I'd slice these very thin on a slicer after freezing them for carpaccio. 1 ounce is a serving of carpaccio for an appetizer. Your average spinalis in total, after trimming and cleaning, is about roughly 3 pounds. So, what's that, 48 ounces roughly, 50 ounces typically. So at an ounce serving, 50 servings at how much you pay for carpaccio?
Yeah.
15?
Yeah, 10, $15.
10,
yeah.
10 bucks.
Yeah.
10 times 50.
Yep.
$500 just for the cat meat you just made. And you still have the center hearts to, to menu and such. So it gets really unique in that sense. So, this here, the beef is part of Performance Food Group's Performance Food Service exclusive Braveheart Black Angus beef program out of Central Kansas. We work in partnership with the Beef Marketing Group, BMG, out of Garden City kind of area, in La Crosse, Kansas area, where the feed yards are. The process for the beef overall, they call what we call path proven. So from point of inception to the plate, even to the consumer, there's traceability with DNA for full cycle sustainability and safety and all of those things, that the lineage is right. The beef themselves, Black Angus DNA is a very high propensity for the DNA breed in the Black Angus program, the Braveheart Black Angus program. What doesn't meet the Black Angus requirements for the Braveheart program typically get deferred off into our choice program called Surety Beef. It's a choice program. There's no Angus claim on it because they don't meet the criteria, but there's a lot of animals within that same 100-mile radius that are all funneling into our signature Black Angus program, and then also our standard commodity program that provides some level of consistency over, say, just the broader commodities market. We have a little bit tighter specs that we can offer and bring to the table. But this here with that, we partnered with Tyson out of Garden City, where they bring in the cattle. The cattle come in, then they get sorted. They get the path proven, the DNA testing to make sure that they are Angus. And then from there, if they're not Angus, they get deferred off. Then they get boxed, and then they go to, we partner with La Crosse Meat Plant, our place up in Wisconsin. That facility there is our just-in-time portion cut program. They do dices, slices of a Braveheart. They do our Allegiance Duroc pork program. They do some of their own programs and things like that. But they also do marinades and semi-prepared meats, if you will. Nothing cooked, all raw, ready to go. Diced carne asada type meat and things like that, or even some specialty cuts within our program, the tomahawks and all the fancy cuts like that, bone in, boneless and whatnot. But what we'll cut here is, and again, I like to leave a little bit of fat on. I might look at the bottom and see just how rough that is, and I could leave that on and portion it and then trim it off. That helps me with my portioning and such, but there's a nice little ribeye heart fillet.
Those are money right there.
This is a very practical thing because a lot of operators can bring this in. The first and probably easiest would be, say, to just cut it into cutlets. But again, thinking in menu terminology and profitability, instead of just calling it a pork cutlet, well, this section from here to here is your pork ribeye.
Right.
No different than in beef, because in the Boston butt attached to here, or the beef chuck, the muscle that extrapolated there, pork, it's called copa or chuck eye. So technically this is the ribeye. Couldn't I get more money for something called pork ribeye?
Yeah.
Or pork New York from the strip loin than just pork cutlet? And those terms would be applicable. Here the sirloin end, the sirloin end has been removed. Okay, that would be kind of on the top of the ham or the tail, your top butt.
Okay.
There, and then again, the Boston butt would have extrapolated in there. So this being like the ribeye, you've got the ribeye cap. Same thing as that, just pork and a lot smaller. I probably wouldn't pull the spinalis off. I would just use this as pork ribeye. What I like about the ribeye and the spinalis, with it being so juicy and flavorful and rich, because you can see there's a difference in how dark the color is. You've got that darker red there versus when we look at the loin and the different, even the loin here, up by the shoulder looks a lot different in color
U-shaped.
than the end. Just a slight difference because you've got more of a working muscle here, more blood flowing through, so it's going to be more rich and hearty, be a little bit more lean and a little bit more delicate further back because you don't have that rich myoglobin in there and such. So one of the things I like about this part is, so I'm just going to cut this like so, and I could cut, you know, my ribeye, pork ribeyes. And again, just for example purposes, you know, there is basically a little bit of my tail, that tail fat or what have you, and then you've got your spinalis going there. You could do it in the same way. We're just going to cut some pork ribeye steaks there. Before I cut further into here, I like this piece to do what I'm going to do next. It offers a little bit of flexibility. We can take the cap off. And what's nice is, again, I would do the whole longer section of it, but we can kind of come in and do like so. Basically butterfly that out a little bit.
So you're going with a 10-inch chef knife.
10-inch chef knife, just for that wide,
quantum knife.
wide
That's
angle.
the most popular knife that we have in circulation right there.
Trim that down like so. You know, on the more meaty pieces, I might be able to get a little.
Yeah.
It's got a
He's a
nice big
professional.
flat surface and all that. But you know, I could get little spinalis cuts off of that. I could take
Little
my
appetizer.
my knife if I wanted to here. And again, thinking street food.
Got the right idea over here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, lollipops.
Yeah.
I could grill them whole. I could skewer them like this and grill them whole, and then cut them.
Yeah.
Now I've got some little satay 1 bites or whatever. You know, I could make really nice again ribeye carnitas.
Yep.
You know, again, it's all about the menu ability and profitability off of that. I'm gonna do a stuffed pork loin a couple different ways. If I had vegetables, seasonal vegetables, if I had spinach or anything like that, you know, this is where something like this could come into play. And even so much as you could do really small little rolls and have little lollipops, pinwheel lollipops. Take our string, and I always like to put my string in a container like that, so obviously I don't have to worry about cross-contamination other than the individual string. What works well with this too is the plastic measuring containers or what have you, to keep that clean and fresh. So just doing a little standard trussing here. We truss for uniformity and even cooking and whatnot, but I like to say, you know, pull the string up like this, and I'm a good Catholic boy from the East Coast, so it's doing the sign of the cross, thumb, pinky, there's my little cross.
Okay.
You know, and then lift and loop and then tie. And so if this were, you know, if I had a retail case, this might make sense to sell as little truss roasts. Or if I wanted to be really efficient, I'd get something called a jet netter. And if I was a caterer and doing something like this, then that jet netter is basically the fishnet stocking of the meat world. It's a steel cone. And you just pull the netting over the cone, and you take whatever roast roulade and shove it through, and then it gets into the netting, and it's basically bone rolled and netted or tied or what have you. Now we're going to do a little different stuffed application. I am going to take off just for all purposes, I'm going to take off the tail, just like that piece we made, the chicharron. Should we make this in a chicharron too? Right? You know, the strap also, you know, besides the tail on a pork loin, if the strap is on there or has been removed or whatever, kind of almost like that finger meat where it attaches to the spine, you know, that can be all good for tacos.
Yep.
Again, I'm still working on the ribeye section here. What I want to do is say a different style stuffed. Right? Now I'll take this, and in this instance, I'm going to use my long knife. This is really fun because this is where, you know, even like in the one where we did the pinwheel, I can use Italian sausage for an Italian theme. I could do a chorizo with roasted corn and salsa verde and things like that. I could do a German bratwurst and do a warm potato German salad or something like that. Same thing with this, but a little different presentation. I get my knife all the way through, one cut like that, okay? And then take the knife out and then do something like this down the center, okay? Like so. And then again, it's easier to do a cooked sausage in this application than a raw fresh. Or if you're gonna do fresh, I would lay these all out on a sheet pan, get them straight, and freeze it. That way when you go to stuff the pork loin, it holds up rather than kind of gets all bent and all that. Kind of like taking lobster tails and putting the skewers in them to cook. This here, we kind of find that cut and then we can put that in there. I did once one with 3 skinny hot dogs in the center, and we called it a Franken-chop.
Yeah.
Every single cut had 3 concentric circles all tightly in there, and it made it fun for kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, there's another application, and what's nice is the sausage not only adds flavor, but visual appeal as well, too. This here, again, now we're getting into kind of more the strip loin section.
Yeah.
So a pork New York,
Yeah.
you know, I'm gonna do this here. I'm gonna cut from the bottom down into the fat there, and so we could get our pork New Yorks, like so. You know, we could get our pork New York Manhattan, right?
$20.
And then we're gonna
Easy.
get a pork flat iron, but not flat iron in the sense of the chuck flat iron, top blade. That would be a misuse of the name, but you can still call this flat iron, or loin flat iron, or I've come to use a term called plank, a pork plank steak, or pork plank New York steak or something, where we're not going to cut down into the portion this way. We're gonna more turn it on its side. We're gonna square it up a little bit. And if I was menuing this, you know, I'd be weighing all this, calculating, okay, what's this center piece gonna be? I know I'm profitable here off of this. I can use this for my tacos and things like that, or my carnitas, and just render those down and cook them down slow. Something like this, I'm gonna turn up and then I'm gonna cut a plank. Now I have plank steaks. Nice flat face like that. You can again kind of do it in that sense of splitting them in half and kind of modeling it after the Manhattan style, or do it whole. Again, something like this, especially for catering world, you know, it's easy to just set these up in advance. You could pre-mark these even, you know, marinate them or dry rub them, pre-mark them, and then skewer them. How easy is that to execute on an off-site premise function or something like that, and then cut them and put them on a platter or whatever, how you're going to present them.
Got to do some cool stuff. Chef kind of walked us through everything. So
Yeah, no, this was a great time. Thanks for the use of your kitchen there, Chef.
Oh, yeah,
Deuce, and
absolutely.
whatnot. Thanks
Our
for the
pleasure.
assistance there, Chef. Sir,
Pleasure
and
being amongst you.
we've got, you know, chuck roll, very applicable in different situations. I mean, obviously, you could do a lot of different things with it. There's at least, again, 40 to 50 servings out of a single chuck that you'd be profitable out of. We looked at the ribeye and all the different parts and whatnot, and very common and untraditional methods of serving it and such, as well as classical presentations. Again, profitability at the operator level, and really, again, it's what's profitable for you. And it might not be the same profitable for somebody else. So assessing those and using those tools beyond a great set of knives is a sharp mind to really, you know, hone in on making those business decisions to be profitable. And something as simple as a pork loin with a different cut, a different, you know, flip of the wrist here, with a sharp knife and a sharp mind, you can really hone in and deliver the goods.
I like the hone pun right there.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks again, Chef.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.